Right, let's dive into a completely hypothetical world here and imagine that Chelsea Football Club had every single player on their books fit and available for selection, and then we are going to ask the question, what is Mauricio Pochettino's strongest team? Well, in this video, I am going to try and answer that question. We're going to pick the formation, we're going to build the lineup, and we're going to discuss the players that will be left out. But people, before we get into it, if you are new around here, welcome to the Joey Knight podcast. At the end of this video, if you like the content and you want to see more from myself, please do me a massive favour by hitting that subscribe button. So look, Chelsea are obviously on a bit of a run of form at the minute, and as much as some of you in my comments can tell me that beating the likes of Fulham and beating the likes of Burnley and knocking Brighton out the cup are just games that we should have won, inevitably we sort of know that that isn't really the case, you know. Look at how Arsenal struggled against Fulham earlier on in the season, how when Man United went to Turf Moor to face Burnley, they hardly came through that test with flying colours, putting a few goals past them like we did. So I think when you draw reference to those games, you can see that actually Chelsea have very much turned a corner, and because of that and because of the performances we're putting in, it would be very easy to say, well, you don't need to change anything. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But you know what? Sometimes, even when it's not broke, it could still do with a bit of fixing. We look at, for example, Manchester City when Pep Guardiola came in. Joe Hart was one of the first names on the team sheet then, and he had hardly ever even put a foot, or I should say a hand, wrong. But when Pep came in, he looked at that area and thought, you know what, I could upgrade there. And eventually he got Edison in, and let's be honest, they levelled up, didn't they? So what I'm saying is, it doesn't need to be obvious that something's broke for it to be fixed. Sometimes you can upgrade, and I do think that when you have the likes of Reece James and Christopher and Nkunku not currently in this starting 11, albeit to injury, you've got to look at them and think, them two are going to need a starting berth. Anyway, all that being said, here is what I think Chelsea's strongest possible starting 11 would be if all players were fit and available. And obviously the first decision that I need to make here is one regarding the formation. So every man and his dog knows that Mauricio Pochettino's preferred formation throughout his managerial career has always been that 4-2-3-1. However, in recent weeks, one of the main things that I believe has helped Chelsea turn a corner is the slight change in formation to a 4-3-3. And what I will say is, in modern day football, there's not really any set formations, is there? Like, when I was growing up, you had a 4-4-2 and alright, maybe sometimes one midfielder might push up, one might push back, you might have a second striker, but for the most part, the teams would line up in that formation. It wouldn't change too much, whereas now, you look at things and I could show you a 90-minute match and I could take screenshots of the formation at 2, 3, sometimes even 4 different times in that 90-minute match, and it could look like a team are playing different formations. So basically what I'm saying here is the formation that I pick will more than likely change in-game, as we've seen from Pochettino's systems, Pochettino's formation so far. All that being said, I am going with a 4-3-3. Starting off, we've got Robert Sanchez in goal. This is an easy one, isn't it? We haven't really seen anything from Petrovic so far, and although in the first couple of games of Sanchez, I was looking at it thinking, don't know, things look a little bit nervy at times. Actually, I think that he's starting to really prove his worth, game in, game out, and I don't just put that down to the recent run of form where we've been winning games. Even in the games we're losing, such as the game against Aston Villa and a few others, I think Sanchez has made some really good saves, and I think that he's firmly put his flag in the ground as our number one at this moment in time. Right back has got to be club captain and my personal favourite player in this Chelsea side, and that is Reece James. Now, the naysayers will say to me, well, Reece can never stay injury-free, but if you remember the start of the video, I did say if everyone is fit and available, so keep it yourself, naysayers. Look, Reece obviously needs to get over the injury problems. We need to help him doing so, and it will be a massive, massive thing that, you know, our defence almost hinges on in terms of Reece getting over these injuries. But if he can, and if he can stay fit and available, I genuinely believe that Reece can put a claim to being the best right back in the world. Like, he is so versatile, good in defence, good in attack. You ask any player that has come up against him and he's so hard to play against. You ask any manager that has managed him and he has got to be one of the first names on the team sheet. There's a reason Poch has made him club captain. So as much as we're all desperate to see him get over his injury problems of recent, I wouldn't even say recent, last few years or so, we do know that there's not a better right back at our club than Reece James at the moment. Right, let's delve into the centre-back pairing, and this one is so hard. Do you understand the quality of options we've got here? You know, we've got Thiago Silva, who's done almost everything in the game and won pretty much everything, and at 39 years old is still very much capable at the top level. We've got Levi Colwill, who I believe is obviously the future of Chelsea Football Club. He's a brilliant player. We got Axel Disasi, who at first I wasn't sure on, and now he's starting to prove his worth a little bit. And then we've got players that are almost forgotten because of their injuries, in the likes of Benoit Badiashile, obviously Wesley Fofana, and an old fan favourite and academy product in Trevor Chalobah. But no matter how many good options we have here, I can obviously only pick two. Or can I? Listen, there's no right choice here. Whoever I pick, I'm going to end up possibly upsetting others. But I would ask you to leave your judgment until you have heard my entire selection here in terms of the defence. So just wait until you get on my case. But I am going to go with a centre-back pairing of Thiago Silva and Axel Disasi. Now, bearing in mind, this means that I do not have Benoit Badiashile in this lineup. You'd probably be correct to accuse me of a little bit of recency bias, and I do completely get that. I understand that, but context is everything here, and I am picking the best possible lineup for this moment right now. If I could go like that and everyone becomes fit and available. And obviously the context here is we all know that Thiago Silva at the end of this year is probably either going to go back to Brazil or he's going to retire, and then there's going to be a spot in that centre-back pairing possibly. And also by that point we're going to have had more information on the likes of Axel Disasi and see how he can perform over the course of a 38 game season, and obviously, you know, Levi Colwill and all these other players here, and then we're going to be able to make a decision. And I understand that probably by that point Benoit Badiashile is probably going to be a starter for us, because every time he's played he's never really put a foot wrong, has he? He's looked really, really good. He elevated us a little bit when he first came in. And obviously Wesley Fofana, let's be honest, like, I've been impressed by him when I've seen him in a poor side last season, but he's never really had a run of games where he's able to stay fit and stake a claim to being our number one starting centre-back. So for that reason, for this moment in time right now, I have got to obviously go with Axel Disasi and Thiago Silva. Oh, actually, I've just realised I've forgotten Levi Colwill there, haven't I? No, I haven't forgotten him, because Levi Colwill is making this lineup somewhat out of position. I'm whacking him up front. No, I'm not. I'm putting him at left back. Look, it's a change of position. It's a change of position that at the start of this season I was questioning, saying, why are we putting Levi Colwill there? He's wasted there. And obviously I do think eventually, like I said, when Thiago Silva comes out of the lineup, maybe Levi Colwill will come back into a more central defensive role. But when I look at it at the moment, Levi Colwill doesn't have the same amount of creativity as Ben Chilwell. But what I do think is he's definitely defensively better than Chile. And if we're playing a back four, we can't really play the same system we used to when we had a back three, where you got the two wing backs bombing on constantly. Yeah, obviously we looked brilliant with Chile bombing on up one side and Reece James bombing on up the other, but we can't realistically be playing that with a back four, because then we're just not going to have the protection when we're getting counter-attacked and when teams come onto us if we're already pushed up there. So that is exactly why I am putting Levi Colwill there. And obviously we spoke, haven't we, about the way that formations will change as we move the ball forward and as we create opportunities and as we attack. And one player, when I spoke about bombing forward, that will still be bombing forward no matter what, is Reece James. His creativity and what he offers us in the final third just can't be matched at the moment. And I do think that when that happens, you're going to see the backline move into a free. And when that does move into a free, I think rather than having, let's say, for example, Axel Disasi, Thiago Silva and Ben Chilwell there, the best free you can possibly have there is obviously going to be Axel Disasi, Thiago Silva and Levi Colwill. And I think that what that does is it quashes some of our worries ever so slightly about being counter-attacked or being vulnerable when we are attacking. And do you know what? Like, I do see this Chelsea team dominating a lot of games, and for that reason, I actually see us having a back three for a lot of the time, because we're going to be attacking a lot of the time. Reece James is going to be bombing forward a lot of the time. So I do think that when Reece goes, having Colwill there is a more sensible option. Does he offer the same amount of attacking threat as Ben Chilwell? No, probably not. But when we move to a free, which I believe will happen very often, is he going to be better suited there than Ben Chilwell? Definitely yes. Right, onto the midfield three, and do you know what? I'm not going to change it. I'm going to stick with Caicedo in the pivot, and I'm going to have Enzo one side in the 8 and Conor Gallagher the other. I know you lot aren't going to disagree with me when it comes to Caicedo and Enzo, and the only one you might possibly do is whether Gallagher is deserving a place in this lineup or not. But look, at the minute, when you look at our other options, is Gallagher more deserving than Ugachukwu? Yes. Now, has Ugachukwu impressed me every time I've seen him in a Chelsea shirt so far? Yes. But Ugachukwu is a player who is bedding into the team, and as much as his performances have impressed me, I don't see Ugachukwu as a leader yet. Why would he be? He's literally just been brought in. Whereas Conor Gallagher, as I've touched on many times before, has become a leader in this team. But also, let me not just label Conor Gallagher's leadership qualities as the only reason why I've got him in this lineup, you know. His ability to turn with the ball, to manoeuvre his way out of tight spaces, even to create for the teammates around him has levelled up massively this season. And I think, apart from Chelsea fans, it's going massively under the radar. And also, when you look at that midfield, right, I'm not doubting that Enzo might find his shooting boots and Caicedo might chip in with a goal here and there, but we can't rely on it. And the one player that I do believe you can rely on to get you goals in that midfield is Conor Gallagher. Like, Conor Gallagher had a really, really good record when it came to goals and assists on his loan spell at Crystal Palace. And although you can say, well, he hasn't done it so much at Chelsea, he has popped up the goals for us, in a time that we weren't scoring goals all that often, especially last season. Great goal against Crystal Palace, you know, a couple of goals towards the back end of last season for us. And I do think that he is the sort of player that can be arriving in the box late and finishing these opportunities off. And I honestly do believe that whether it will happen this season or not, I'm not sure. But come next season, Conor Gallagher will be hitting double figures when it comes to goals. I think he'll be getting 10 goals a season in this Chelsea team. And for that, every successful midfield that are competing for trophies and trying to get top four or even further on than that needs a player in there that can get you some goals. And I do believe that at the moment, Conor Gallagher is going to become that man. Now, let me just quickly, before I move on, obviously touch on the elephant in the room, and that is Romeo Lavia. And no matter how highly I rate Romeo Lavia, no matter how well I think he done at Southampton last year, obviously in a struggling side, and no matter how many different clubs, including Liverpool most notably, were after Romeo Lavia, I just got to be honest with you here, I've not yet seen him in a Chelsea shirt. I haven't seen him in a Chelsea shirt. And for that reason, it can sound very simplistic, but I can't include him in this lineup because when I look back to not even that long ago, you know, Havertz, Lukaku, Ziyech, Pulisic, the list goes on. Plenty of players who looked brilliant at their respective clubs, but then came into Chelsea and just weren't able to recreate that form, to replicate the sort of form that had made us spend the money on those players. And for that reason, I'm not at all saying that I don't think Romeo Lavia can do that, but I think it would be, you know, I would just be sort of trying to win brownie points here if I was just going, yeah, Romeo Lavia straight in there. He's brilliant. He looked really, really good at Southampton, but I need to see him in a Chelsea shirt before I can put him in there. And ultimately, he might come back from this injury, and after a couple of games, I might be saying, yeah, he's got to be in there. He's a starter for us, and then it could all change, and this video could become irrelevant. But at the moment, he's not back from the injury. I haven't seen enough of him, and for that reason, I am sticking with my midfield three of Caicedo, Enzo and Gallagher. Anyway, on to the front three, and this is where it gets really, really difficult because we've got an absolute depth of quality, really good options in that front line who we could have. So I think the easiest thing for me to do is actually by starting with the number 9. So obviously, look, we've got Jackson there, we've got Brower there, we got Washington, who we haven't really seen anything of. And we've got Christopher Nkunku coming back, who obviously can play multiple different positions, but we've seen him out wide. We've seen him as a second striker, and we've also seen him in that number 9 role. And it's a really hard one. Like, Jackson, I do think has a lot of capability and obviously would be described, in my opinion, as a raw talent, but one that nevertheless could very, very much come good. And I look at some of the way he plays. There's been a little bit of a comparison made to Drogba. I don't really see it myself. Like, I don't think stylistically he's much like Drogba at all. But what I would say is his ceiling's really, really high. You know, I do think that he will come good. Obviously, he has missed a few sitters, hasn't he? And we weren't really expecting that when we see him in pre-season. He looked cold as ice, and we didn't think he was going to be that sort of player. And so far at Chelsea, he's proved a little bit to be a player that will miss a sitter here and there. And obviously, actually, if you look back at his time at Villarreal, there's some compilations on YouTube of him doing something quite similar. So maybe that's just in his DNA as a striker. I, however, do think he's going to come good, and I do think he'll be a top-level striker. But we've also got Brower. Obviously, Brower is a player that, before the injury, I was really high on Brower, man. Brower looks so good. And obviously, when you look at, you know, the dying breed of number 9s, look at the players at the moment that are sort of leading the way, yeah? You've got, like, Haaland, obviously, time's gone by, Vlad Ibrahimovic, even the new boy at Man United, Højlund. Like, they're strong, physical, direct strikers with a lot of pace. And Broa's in that mould, isn't he? I'm not comparing him to them or saying he's as good as them, but he is in that mould. You can't deny that. So Broa would be one, especially as well when you hear other players talk about him, like Raheem Sterling said, Broa's the next one. And what I think he meant by that is the next number 9 coming through, not just Chelsea's next number 9. And when you look at who Sturbo's played with at Man City, at Liverpool, you know, he doesn't need to blow smoke up anyone's arse for no reason. So the fact that Raheem Sterling's saying that gives me a lot of confidence. But he's coming back from a career-threatening injury, and although it's good to see him get minutes, so far we haven't seen anything of Broa to suggest that injury is just a flash in the pan and he's completely fine, completely rehabilitated. So I don't think I could pick him there. Washington, we haven't seen anything of Washington, have we? So I'm definitely not picking him there. I am going to go with Christopher Nkunku. Now, I'm contradicting myself a little bit here, aren't I? Because obviously I ruled Romeo Lavia out because he hasn't played a competitive match for Chelsea, and neither's Christopher Nkunku. But, you know, it's my channel and I make the rules here, okay? So, look, context is everything, do you know what I mean? And I think that the fact that we haven't seen Romeo Lavia at all is part of the reason why I'm doing that. Also, Romeo Lavia being a young player who there's only a small little sample of what he can do in the Premier League is another thing that makes me sort of steer away from it and put the likes of Conor Gallagher and the other midfielders I've put there. However, with Christopher Nkunku, we have seen him in a Chelsea shirt. Yes, it was in pre-season, but it did look impressive. He did link up well with the teammates around him, and also he's got a depth of experience, hasn't he? A wealth of experience, I should say, in European football, having played in France and in Germany, and in 119 games in the Bundesliga, he averaged pretty much a goal every other game. When you bring it into goals and assists, he averaged one every 91 minutes, 92 minutes or something in terms of goal contribution. So obviously also at the age of 25, I believe there's a much bigger back catalogue of what he can do and the work he's done to be able to draw reference to in comparison to, say, Romeo Lavia, who obviously I've ruled out because we haven't seen enough of him. So they're my reasons for starting Christopher Nkunku here. I think he's a bit more of a sure thing. And obviously the first thing that people will tell me straight away is that he's not a number 9. He's played number 9 a lot, you know, and obviously when you look at his time in the Bundesliga, mate, every time he went through on goal, he was finishing his opportunities. He looks clinical. He looks like he's got the right mindset. He's at the best possible age that I could have a sort of goal scorer in their development. And for that reason, I'm definitely going to have him as the number 9. But I do understand, and I will sort of caveat that by saying, if Jackson really starts to find his shooting boots and stops missing sitters every now and again, I'm not going in on it for it, he could stake a claim. Broa could stake a claim. But that's the beautiful thing, isn't it? We've got so many players in there that you look at and you think, yeah, you could really come good in this position. And the interesting one will be to see, obviously, if Chelsea go in for a number 9 in January, because I think that maybe we'll look at it. Maybe we'll look at Nkunku coming back and think, well, let's trial him out there first, you know? The only other thing I'd say, and you'll see this when I sort of go across the front line here, is having Nkunku there with the players that I'm going to name doesn't really give us much height along that front line, but not all good teams competing for top honours need to have height in the front line, you know? Look at Liverpool's front three when they won the league. They didn't really have any height in there. Obviously, even Arsenal at the minute, they haven't got massive height in that front line, so I don't think that's a massive problem. So, Nkunku in the 9. Left wing, I'm going to put Raheem Sterling. How can you not have Raheem Sterling in the form he's in? He's been brilliant, and obviously he's gelled perfectly, hasn't he, with Mauricio Pochettino? He's one of the most senior players in this squad. And when you look at the rest of the team that I've named, right, you've only got, Thiago Silva in there. He sticks out like a sore thumb when it comes to age, obviously. Very senior player. But apart from Thiago Silva, Sterling's the only other one, either 26 or older. And as much as we put massive emphasis at the moment on buying prospects for the future, high sell-on value, all this stuff, whatever happened to the here and now players? And Raheem Sterling is a here and now player. And the other thing you can level at me is, Sterling doesn't do it in the big games, but not every game is a big game. And when you look at the fact that over a 38-game season, Sterling is going to guarantee you numbers when it comes to goals and assists. And not only that, I'm not writing him off of being able to do it in the big games. I think he can. Just obviously hasn't really showed that so far at his time at Chelsea. But obviously I do think that he can come on. I think he's one of the most underrated players of this generation, Raheem Sterling. Like, a lot of people always calling to have him out the lineup, and he has one game where he doesn't produce anything. It's like he's never got any grace. He can have a really good performance, and if he doesn't perform the next week, it's Sterling needs to be out. So massively, massively underrated and leads by example every single time he plays, in the way that he trains, in the influence he has on these younger players around the team. Like, a lot of these players will be looking and thinking, if I can emulate half of what Raheem Sterling's done in the game, I'll be finishing off with a good career. So let's look over to the other side. And we've got one spot left. Realistically, we've got 4 players, haven't we? We've got Mykhailo Mudryk, we've got Cole Palmer, we've got Noni Madueke, and we've got Ian Maatsen. And ultimately, because we've got so many quality options here who I believe are all really, really good young players, it's going to be so hard, isn't it, to make this decision and to let the other 3 players that I don't pick here down, sorry. And obviously, yeah, I mean, it does show our squad depth. When you look at our squad depth here, it's actually scary, isn't it? Like, the players that we have got available for selection, and all of them in individual games, Mudryk, Palmer, Madueke, Maatsen, all of them could do a brilliant, brilliant job for us. But as hard as it is to pick one, for me, I've got to be honest, it's quite easy. It's quite clearly Cole Palmer, isn't it? Cole Palmer has come in. He's instantly become a fan favourite. He's shown us that he can hold the key to unlocking these defences, which we'd really, really been struggling to do. And in my opinion, he has already made himself indispensable to this starting lineup. And I get that Madueke's always looked good when he comes on. I get that Mykhailo Mudryk needs minutes, and that's how he's going to advance and fulfil his price tag. And I also get that if we don't start playing Ian Maatsen, we might lose him. But at the end of the day, I can only pick one. And the player that I think is most likely to go on that pitch and provide us with creativity, goals, assists, and help drag us to victories is Cole Palmer. So that being said, there is my best starting 11 if everyone is fit and available. But if you're feeling down about the players that got left out, just think about our bench, man. We are going to have a bench with that starting 11 with Jackson, Brower, Lavia. We got Cassidy coming back from Leicester in the summer. There's so many players there that I haven't even mentioned. Ben Chilwell, you know, it's literally ridiculous when you look at our depth at the minute. But what I do want to know is, what do you lot think? Do you think that team can hang with the best of them? I personally do, but I do realise that these players are going to need a little bit more time to work with Pochettino, obviously. And let me know, where have I gone wrong? Personnel-wise, who would you change? Would you have that formation? Would you go with something different? I really, really want to know your lot's thoughts. I'm very interested to hear your lot's thoughts. This video is going to be getting uploaded Sunday morning, so obviously we'll have had a little bit of the international break. We hate the international break, don't we? It's a load of bollocks, mate. We just want club football all the time. But obviously, Chelsea have their biggest test so far of the season when they face Arsenal next Saturday. It is a game that I will be live on the kickoff for with Brian, Josh, Craig, the rest of the boys. I'm really looking forward to that one. And once again, I really, really want to thank you lot, because the channel's just growing day by day. I've got hundreds of you subscribing per day, and it's really overwhelming. And it's the fact that you lot are subscribing to the channel is giving me the opportunities that I'm getting at the moment, and it's also giving me the opportunity to bang out more content for you guys. So once again, all I can say is I'm really, really grateful. From the bottom of my heart, really thankful for all the support everyone's giving this channel at the moment. When this video goes live, I'll be reading all your comments. I'll try and get back to as many of you as I possibly can. So please let me know your thoughts and put your ideal, fully fit starting 11 in the comments, and I'll try and get back to all of them. I will see you all in the next one.